This video will cover the general settings of our Sirrus mobile app, our Sirrus web app, our Summit Online for uploading yield data, and then Summit Desktop. The view that you're looking at currently is Sirrus Mobile on an iPad, and if I come up here and click on the menu bar and it slides over, I have the General Settings button, and when I click on that it takes me into the General Settings themselves for the setup options. You would come down through here and set everything up what's appropriate for your location and your part of the world. Default nutrient profile, whatever's appropriate. And for your export for Slingshot and John Deere would take you out. You would add in your credentials for those accounts as well as for doing that to be able to automate that process. And as you move down through here, a few things to note: this boundary creation minimum. If you ever create a boundary or management zone that's smaller than 1/4 of an acre, because that's the default setting, it goes away and you think something's wrong, but it actually just doesn't meet the minimum criteria. So you can set that down lower and it would accept that. On the soil sampling for sample with GPS, that's like for soil sampling itself. If you have that turned on, then that means that you're always going to be in the field doing it with live GPS. But if you want to do it at the office to create recommendations for a team and do the actual soil sampling in the field, you want that turned off. Scouting point, you have the option between polygons and points. The point I would point out to you, no pun intended, is that if you want to go back to actual XY locations, the next rotation of your scouting, you'll probably want to set that to point. Polygon just ties it to the entire area. The scouting schedule, you have the option to go through these different intervals as far as it reminding you. And then if I come up here and click on the sync setup in the top left, it shows me the seasons downloaded. And for each one of these, you'll notice my numbers, what I have set to for the seasons. But my point I want to make to everybody is that whatever growers, farms, fields that you have downloaded to your Sirrus iOS or your Sirrus mobile, it's going to go back on those fields and download the data for those different layers that you're looking at here. So you may not want it taking up or all that amount of space with all this data. So you'll notice my scouting is set to the current season. My soil sampling I have set to 2015 because I've got people, that's the last rotation series that I sampled, and I want to be able to view that. My nutrient and fertilizer recs, I've only gone back a season. My surface analysis, I've got it going back a few years more. My imagery I have set to the current year. There's no sense taking up a bunch of the space on your memory of your iOS with multiple images. And then yield, I'd go back one season. On the Sirrus web application, this is found underneath Sirrus.ag up here. And this will bring you into this dashboard page. And if I come up here to the top right, you have the option to come in here to the settings. In the settings window, you have the same things what we saw just now in the Sirrus mobile app. In the settings window, you have the same options of your nutrient profile, your measurement system, and the like. And you can go in and manage your account, manage your subscription as far as a premium or free version, and the like. On the online summit, which is the location you would go to upload yield data, I've logged into my account up here. But in my case, I could send yield data up to my own account. The powerful thing about this system is that you could set farmers up with an AgX account at the agxplatform.com. They don't have to have software. All they would need is an AgX account. And if that farmer was savvy enough to be able to go in there and upload the yield data, they could push it to your email account, and you wouldn't have to go out to that farm and visit that at that far off location, wherever the case may be. There's 3 settings that has to be done correctly. Number 1, the yield data has to be the same format. Number 2, it has to be in a zip folder. And number 3, it can't be over 1 gigabyte in size. If I come over here to the settings button in the top left corner, this loads up the general settings for your online summit. And I would suggest just taking all these options and of course setting your units here, whatever's the correct unit setting. Your field assignment, your yield data that intersects a single field will be clipped and assigned to that field boundary. This is why I've always preached through the years that the boundaries drive everything in our system. They do, and everything that we work with. If the yield observation intersect multiple fields, we're going to clip and assign that to the fields as well. And on the coverage, down here on the bottom, typically what I will set with my people in training is 75% on the low end, meaning that if yield data is being pushed to your account, but it doesn't meet a minimum of 75% coverage of the actual field boundary, because yield data is actually polygon data, all those little areas out there, we know how far you traveled, the width, and all of that, so we have an area to be able to do the yield calculation for dry yield, wet yield, and the like. But if it doesn't meet the 75%, it just sits there, so to speak, just idle, until it hits 75% and above, and then it starts processing. And then if you're prompted later on, if you get to the end of the season, you don't have 75%. And then less than 110%. If it's let's say 105 or 110 or 120, that's where your yield monitor is being kept down, and you have polygons on top of polygons, which of course make up area, acreage or hectares, and that ends up being more than the actual 100% of the field boundary itself. So you can alleviate a lot of that, whereas it's always off timestamp. It will clean that yield data up, and it does a very decent job of cleaning that yield data up on all of that. When you finish with all this, make sure you hit the Apply Changes down in the bottom center of the screen. In the Desktop Summit application, if you come up here to the Home view in the top left, you have your Settings button. And under the Settings tab, you've got all the same settings what I've been referring to in most of the other programs. So you would go down through there and set all of that up, and any changes you might ever make sure you hit the Apply button. The last thing just to the right of the Sync button is this button, and this allows you to look into your AgX account and make a sub-selection of growers, farms, and fields to have downloaded to your actual Summit program itself. So that covers the general settings in each one of the programs.